So, the Gospel of Mark is like the other Gospels. It's all about the work of Jesus. But by studying Mark, we really discover God's call to service and basically his service in his kingdom. We learn the rhythms of the work, we learn rest, we learn worship, everything that God intends for our lives. We see the opportunities and the dangers inherent in living, this extravagant lifestyle, wealthy lifestyle, gaining status, paying taxes, working with a society that they're not really necessarily aimed toward God's purposes. This is where we meet fishermen, we meet laborers, we meet mothers, we meet fathers, because parenting is type of work. Tax collectors, we meet people with disabilities that affect their work. We meet leaders, we meet farmers and lawyers and priests and builders and philanthropists. We meet so many different people. We meet bankers and governors. We meet all of these people and all these wide ranges of personalities that we probably encounter today in today's society. As with the other Gospels, Mark is kind of set in a backdrop of turbulent economic times. The Romans are around in this era, and Galilee is kind of undergoing this major upheaval, this social upheaval with land increasingly owned by the wealthy and few, often foreigners, with the general movement away from the small scale farming to more of this larger scale estate-based agriculture. Those who had once been tenant farmers and even landowners were forced to become just like day laborers, and they really had to take steps down from where they were in their socioeconomic status. Often they've lost their property through foreclosures by the Roman government and the Roman Empire because they couldn't pay the taxes, because they had to take loans out, and it was crazy. So we're really going to look at the verse today, verses in Mark 1, verses 16 and 20, and this is really what's called the calling of the first disciples. Jesus calls out these men who are fishermen, they're not laborers, they are in a family business, so you'd say, to get out of their comfort zone. He challenges them to leave their income, the stability, the things that we take, security in, to follow him. Mark's detail in this is a lot different than what we see in the other Gospels, because he really talks about how James and John leave their father, Zebedee. They leave him with the hired men, and what that is they're leaving the family business and they're moving on to a kingdom family business. They weren't hired men, they weren't day laborers, but they were very successful at their business, and for these disciples to follow Jesus, they have to demonstrate a willingness to allow their identity, their status, their worth to not be determined by their wealth, their money, their status, but by the relationship with Jesus himself. Fishing was a major industry in Galilee. It's a huge thing to just walk away from this, especially in this time of economic turbulence that we see in Galilee, and the willingness of these disciples to forsake such a stability and such a comfort zone is quite remarkable that we see this happen. The economic stability is no longer their chief purpose, but their purpose now is and their identity is now found in Christ, and they're giving up everything. Jesus doesn't necessarily, when he calls them, he doesn't get rid and reject their earthly vocation because they were fishermen. He just kind of reorients it. He says, hey, you're not going to be the fisherman you were, but now you're going to be fishers of men. I think the main thing that we need to get out of this passage is, Christ isn't calling us to just, leave our jobs and be wandering preachers in society, but we're called to ground our identity in Christ. Whether we leave our job or not, we're still followers of Jesus. We're still fishermen. And this challenges us to kind of resist the temptation to make money, to make work, to make fame, to make all of these things that we see, tear people apart. They don't need to be the defining element of who we are any longer.